After which he says that this is the last place the girl visited since death awaits her. In this world, there are heroes who have abilities that far exceed those of humans, and each person has their own individual ability. They protect the peace of ordinary people and the world from villains. Without such heroic people, chaos would reign and the world would be mired in darkness. They are loved, respected, and very grateful for their contribution to society. But often good guys are envied by others. People watched open access footage of the battles. The girl and the boy admired the hero in black clothes because he defeated the huge villain with one blow. The guy looks closely at the picture of a person on the phone. Then he turns his gaze to the young man who was sitting opposite them. And he thinks that Kelvin looks like the hero who fought in the video. Kelvin says that he overindulged and afterward he vomited profusely. So there was no way he could have been at the scene of the battle. Upon hearing this, Edgar agrees. Suddenly, Calvin gets a message and tells his friends that he's going to go to the bathroom for a bit. On the way, Kelvin watched the news, which said that the recent hero who defeated the villain suddenly disappeared. Finally, Calvin entered the toilet and locked the door behind him. A moment later, the very man mentioned in the news appears in the toilet. Kelvin tells the hero that he risks getting into trouble if he is caught. The hero, taking off his helmet, says that it is very hot in it and Kelvin need not worry. The guy adds that suddenly revealing a face is the most effective way to draw attention to a mysterious hero. Kelvin suggests that Lucas transform back, as he is not used to seeing himself. Lucas used his ability and, before our very eyes, began to transform into a different person. When the transformation was complete, Kelvin suddenly grabbed Lucas by the chin, and he asks if he was alone with the girls, since his face looks too happy. Lucas replies that he has done this many times, to which the other person nods approvingly. Calvin tells him to wash his suit and praises Lucas for the job he did. The guy is perplexed and wonders whether he was a hero or just a bully. Lucas had superpowers, but even though others have them, not everyone can become a hero. So Lucas replaces the hero by borrowing his real personality, and simply plays the role of a double. 20 years ago, people with superpowers began to appear all over the world. The world plunged into chaos and lawlessness, and it seemed like the end. The police were unable to maintain the previous peace and order. There appeared people who wanted to use their abilities for personal purposes. Law enforcement agencies were unable to stop the destruction, and a lot of civilians suffered. The government quickly passed a law that was supposed to dispel the chaos. People with superpowers were divided into villains who did not obey the rules and heroes who had to stand up to the villains. At the villains' headquarters in one of the luxury rooms, the leader of the villain alliance was named Nathan, and he scoffed at the law that had been passed and did not understand its usefulness. Before that, Pathetic's policemen came to them in an attempt to catch the villains. Nathan didn't believe there would be any heroes nowadays. Suddenly, the window breaks and a hero appears in a mask and a red cloak. The villains were amused by the image of the hero in latex and his concept. The hero, turning to Nathan, says that he will punish him according to the first point of the law on heroes and villains. Nathan replies that he is too weak and he will beat him to death. The villain attacked the guy with the intent to kill, but the hero did not retreat, but accepted the fight and used his ability. The next moment he punched Nathan in the stomach. The villain flew into the wall, destroying it, and fell to the ground. He asks the guy who he is and where he came from. The guy called himself a hero named Justice. This victory later made Justice the most popular hero and marked the beginning of a heroic idol. Lucas has the ability to copy, but he can't fight villains with this ability. The guy came home and a stream of thoughts consumed him. Lucas envied heroes with strong superpowers and the fact that they could live life to the fullest. But despite this, he had a way to make money. Even though it is illegal, the heroes themselves come to him with requests. Ultimately, everyone is trying to make money to survive. Lucas set himself the goal of working hard to earn a lot of money and retiring at 50. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door in the middle of the night. Lucas decided to check who this uninvited guest was. Opening the door, the most popular hero appeared before him. The man asked the guy if Lucas lived here. The man was Justice. The hero asks the guy if he becomes a double of the heroes while they are on a mission, in order to keep their identities secret. Lucas was scared because his activities were illegal, and he had no chance to escape since Justice himself was against him. The flow of his thoughts was stopped by the hero's request to become his double. The guy, perplexed, asks why a hero like him needs this. Justice says he knows Lucas's client confidentiality service, thus avoiding the question. The man brought everything he needed and opened the suitcase with the documents. The guy says that there is no photo without a face on the documents. Hearing this, Justice takes off his mask, revealing his face. Lucas asks when he should start work, to which the man replies that he should start tomorrow. Justice gives the guy a business card and tells him to come to the specified address. Lucas wanted to ask a few more questions and asked the man to wait. But when he followed the hero out, he quickly disappeared from sight. The next day, Lucas came to the given address, which turned out to be a huge building. The guy didn't believe that he had come to the exact address given, because it didn't meet his expectations. Justice was his complete opposite, as he could protect another person with his body. The guy didn't know why Justice approached him, but he couldn't pass up such an opportunity to make money. If he does a good job, he will make good connections for the future. With these thoughts, Lucas entered the room. The room was spacious and luxuriously furnished, with an armchair and 2 sofas in the center of the room. Lucas entered the room and offered to discuss the details of their collaboration. But as he got closer, he realized that Justice was dead. The guy was very scared and jumped back. He was shocked and confused because he didn't believe that anyone could kill the #1 hero. The guy decided not to rush to conclusions and decided to check. Just a slight touch caused him to suddenly get electrocuted. He couldn't understand what it was. At the same moment, there was a loud explosion and the room was illuminated by a bright blue light. The explosion sent the boy flying to the side and Justice's body fell to the floor. The last thing the young man saw was a blue light. The next moment his arm began to hurt terribly and his veins began to bulge. Immediately a strong pain came over me, which could drive anyone crazy. The guy definitely saw the light emanating when he used his abilities. He realized that he urgently needed to leave before anyone came. Lucas didn't know what had happened in the room before he arrived, but he knew that if he stayed there, he could get into trouble. He ran at full speed, frightening the people walking towards him. Suddenly he collided with a man and spilled his coffee. Seeing who he had bumped into, Lucas was surprised by the familiar face. That man turned out to be Kelvin, who didn't understand why Lucas was in the same place. Lucas was glad to see Kelvin, as he was a first-class hero. Lucas continued to hold his paralyzed hand, but when he turned his attention to it, he realized that everything was fine, and it didn't hurt. Kelvin said that the guy would need to have his expensive clothes cleaned, and even if he worked all his life, he would not be able to buy them. Suddenly they heard the sound of a window breaking, but did not attach much importance to it. And while the boys were talking, an enemy attack was approaching them. They attacked Kelvin in the side and caused him significant damage. Kelvin winced in pain and didn't understand what was happening or who was attacking them. The villain in green clothes stood in the broken window and was disappointed by the worthlessness of the boy who was discussed on social media. He added that he was just a worthless worm and not worth any attention. Lucas was very surprised by the sudden appearance of the villain and immediately connected his appearance with the murder of Justice. Kelvin got angry when he heard what the villain said and used his ability. He replied that he would make fried squid out of that, and he pounced on the villain to deliver the first attack. The villain jumped up, thereby dodging the hero's attack. Without wasting any time, he launched a counterattack with his tentacles in midair. But the guy, using his ability, easily repelled this attack. The next moment he attacked the villain again, saying that he would destroy him. But this played into the villain's hands, and he grabbed the guy with his tentacles. The guy didn't expect such a trap, and tried to free himself from the grip. The villain says that the guy is stupid for thinking that there are only 4 tentacles, and that he has already lost. The tentacles began to strangle the hero, and people, seeing this, began to run in different directions, losing hope. Lucas couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't think that the villain could defeat Kelvin so easily. After a short time, the boy stopped breathing, and the villain was disappointed by the hero's weakness and stupidity. The next moment, the villain turned to ordinary people and attacked everyone indiscriminately. The villain enjoyed watching people suffer, and Lucas managed to hide behind the counter. People were shaking with fear, and they were waiting for Justice to appear. They knew that he would deal with this villain. But Lucas knew the terrible truth that Justice was dead. These people would die waiting for a hero who would not even come to their aid. Lucas was afraid. He couldn't cope with such a villain. He wasn't even a hero, and couldn't compete with people with strong abilities. And in the noise and confusion, Lucas's thoughts are interrupted by the crying of a girl. Unfortunately, the villain hears her crying and turns his attention to her. The girl sat on the floor and rubbed her eyes with her hands because she was lost and very scared. Lucas couldn't watch the girl being killed and started yelling at her to run away quickly. The villain found this amusing, and he attacked the child at that very second. The girl could only watch as the tentacle approached her at great speed. Suddenly, a picture of his little sister dying appeared in Lucas's mind. He couldn't bear to watch the scene from the past reappear before his eyes. He made a lunge in an attempt to protect the girl. Lucas didn't know what to do and just instinctively tried to stop the tentacle with his hand. The guy wasn't sure if he could stop the attack. At the moment of contact with the tentacle, sparks of lightning appeared. Finally, Lucas was able to stop the tentacle with his hand. The villain was very surprised that his attack was stopped. Lucas unknowingly transformed into Justice, thereby protecting the girl. The boy felt a completely new force operating in his hand. He forcefully tore apart one of the villain's tentacles. In doing so, he inflicted significant damage on the villain. Justice doesn't know what's going on here, but he says he will punish the villain according to the first law. Lucas felt his body being filled with an enormous power that he couldn't control properly. Despite this, it was his first time fighting a villain, and he was not absolutely confident of victory. The villain did not expect Justice to appear, and he says that all his efforts are useless, since his tentacles have infinite regeneration. Without wasting any time, the villain rushed into attack, planning to kill Justice, just like he did the boy hero. But all of the villain's attacks were very slow in Justice's eyes, and he easily dodged each of them. He easily bypassed attacks and approached the enemy. The villain was surprised that his attacks were so ineffective. The man approaching the attacker swung his fist. The next second, the villain was thrown back by a powerful blow to the face. But that wasn't the end. Justice grabbed the villain by the tentacle, and with great force he threw him into the wall. Lucas hadn't fully mastered his new powers yet, and didn't expect him to fly so far from a simple throw. It was an astonishing power that had to be controlled and used wisely. While the hero was pondering the situation, the villain had already gotten up and attacked the guy. Justice clenched his fist and was ready to finish the villain with the final blow. But suddenly his strength began to fade, putting him in a dangerous position. Lucas realized that this process was the same as the first time, and he had no control over the transformation. This was very bad, because without Justice's power, he could not do anything. The villain was approaching the guy very quickly, and it seemed as if time had stopped. Suddenly the villain was attacked by a yellow flash of light. She hit him and he flew far to the side. The bad guy was dealt with, and Lucas was very lucky. A young girl named Ashley came to the rescue. She admired Justice and was amazed at how he calculated the moment for her attack. But in reality, his hearing wasn't good enough to hear her approach, but he was glad that he survived thanks to Ashley. The girl admires Justice's speed and asks how he got to the scene before everyone else. At the same time, the villain tries to escape while the heroes are distracted by the conversation. But he didn't know that Ashley had a long-distance superpower. She shot yellow beams from her eyes and hit the villain again. She was amazed at the stupidity and arrogance of the criminal, since he decided to attack Mr. Justice. Turning around, there was no one in front of her, and the girl wondered where the hero had gone. Ashley wanted to get an autograph, but the woman in the black hood tells her to come to her senses. She reminds the girl that she needs to take care of the wounded, to which Ashley replies that she completely forgot about it. The masked girl's name was Camila, and she was surprised that Justice was able to survive. She noticed a guy in a white sweater running out of the building. That guy was Lucas, who wanted to get away from the scene as quickly as possible. Camila looked thoughtfully after the man who was running away, but did not attach any particular importance to him. In the evening, the light was on in Lucas's room. He shredded all the documents he received from Justice and decided to get rid of them. Having got rid of the documents, he decided to think about what to do next. Since Justice was the most powerful hero, that meant the villain who killed him was of a higher rank, and Lucas blamed himself for not thinking of transforming before escaping. And thanks to this oversight, he heard an unfamiliar voice. The voice said that Lucas was very meticulous since he decided to get rid of the documents after shredding them. The guy was scared by this voice and he didn't see anyone in the area. He kept looking around to find where the voice was coming from. The voice came from below, and an unfamiliar figure emerged from its shadow. The guy was very scared and fell on his back in surprise. Finally, the figure stood up to its full height, and the voice belonged to Camila. She used her ability, and shadowy hands tore apart the package of documents. By manipulating the shadows, she returned the paper to its original state. Lucas, looking at this, could not believe his eyes, as he had never seen anything like this before. All the documents he had shredded were safe and sound. Camila looked at the documents carefully. The next moment, she asks Lucas rhetorically if he saw that Justice was dead. She adds that she doesn't need people knowing about this, as they can harm her. Camila attacked Lucas with her ability. The guy realized that the girl wanted to kill him, and he had no choice but to fight. And if Justice died because of her, then he must be serious. He knew he couldn't catch the shadows like that villain's tentacles, but their attacks were similar. His plan was to avoid attacks and strike back at close range. Suddenly he felt that the transformation was about to end. He didn't have time to get close to Camila, as the transformation time was coming to an end. Camila realized that the guy in front of her was just an inept imitator. She adds that the guy is stupid for deciding to imagine himself as a fearless hero. Lucas had no intention of dying, and with his last strength he broke the asphalt and lifted a block of stone, and he used it as a shield from Camila's attack. The girl was surprised by the guy's dexterity and intelligence, and she didn't notice how the guy managed to get close to her so much that he could reach her. At the critical moment, Lucas delivered an uppercut from below. Camila was even confused for a second because the guy turned out to be not such a weakling. The guy wanted to strike a second blow, and had already swung, when he suddenly realized that he could not move. The girl says that the guy tried hard, but it was the end for him because he stepped on her territory. He was enveloped in shadows and lifted into the air in an attempt to strangle him. His breathing was cut off and he couldn't breathe. But suddenly the girl thought about it, looking at the guy choking, and the next moment she canceled her ability. The guy didn't understand why the girl let him go. Camila asks him if he will continue to do what he was doing before. The guy doesn't understand her, and she says that he is not an ordinary person. The young girl asks if he wants to continue playing the role of Justice. The man didn't know what to answer, because he didn't understand what was going on in this woman's head. She explains to him that if people find out that the #1 hero has died, then people will panic, and she needs a person who can buy her some time so she can sort out the situation. The guy jumps up and asks who she is and why she tried to kill him then. She replies that her name is Camilla and she is a hero who was under Justice's leadership. The girl says the documents contained information about her, but it appears the guy didn't read them. After looking through the documents, the guy finds her and confirms the veracity of her words. Camilla says she only wanted to scare him into cooperating with her. The heroine adds that she will pay him $1 billion every month if the guy agrees to cooperate. Lucas was very surprised when he heard this amount, as it was much more than he had ever received. He asks her what will happen if the truth comes out and people find out that he is just a fake. The girl tells him not to worry about it because she will support him and make sure no one finds out. Camilla adds that she has no intention of forcing him, but he must understand one thing. If the villains find out that Justice is dead, they will rise from their deep sleep and begin to commit lawlessness in the city. A full-scale war between heroes and villains will begin, and many innocent residents may fall under the hot hand of this war. She tells him to make the right choice, but Lucas didn't know, or rather didn't believe in his own strength, because being the #1 hero is a big responsibility. The girl understands that the guy is not capable of doing this and leaves, telling the guy not to talk too much. Lucas stops Camilla and says that the calculated amount does not correspond to all the risks and his importance as the #1 hero. He offers to do the job for $2 billion. The girl agrees and tells him not to complain later, since he signed up for this himself. Lucas spent the next week studying the archive's documents on Justice, because it was the most effective way to remember him, because he had to know the person he was trying to copy. After that, Camilla picked him up and they set off on their journey. Lucas asks if it's wise to keep Justice's death a secret from the heroes as well as the villains. Camilla replies that they don't need to know this, and if they wanted to know, they would have known about it a long time ago. The guy doesn't understand what she means and looks at her questioningly. She replied that he would understand everything himself if he saw everything once. Their destination was a logistics center. The girl says that he was not mistaken, but it is only on the outside. The camera scanned Camilla and the doors opened automatically. In fact, this building housed the heroes' headquarters. Before Lucas's eyes appeared a huge golden statue of Justice and a large number of different heroes. The atrium, or headquarters, was very well camouflaged, as various imports and exports took place here. Lucas was surprised by the number of heroes who were chatting with each other carefree. Some were eating or drinking tea, while others were flying in an unknown direction on their own business. Finally, they came to a huge door and stopped. Camilla tells the guy that she wants to test the waters, and that he shouldn't go there with her. She adds that he should not draw attention to himself and just observe from the side. The large room also contained many heroes, and this was where the heroes' meetings were usually held. The key leaders of all 4 hero teams have already gathered here, and they heatedly discussed the topics that concerned them. A girl named Helen was unhappy that it was their group, the Guardians, who were being blamed for the increase in villain activity. Derek replies that it was in their territory that the greatest activity was noticed. He held the first place in the Inhumans team. The man adds that activity in other areas has decreased, which shows that they are not doing a good job. Helen replies that it is not their team's fault that their territory attracts a large number of villains. Norman, the second most powerful member of the Inhumans team, adds that it's unfair to give most of the budget to those who perform poorly. Arthur, who was the strongest man in the Union team, tells him that he is not worthy of being called a hero if he only thinks about money. Lucas peeked through the crack in the door at the discussion, and was amazed that even among heroes there was discord. Sigmund asks where Justice went. This guy was the strongest member of the El Condor team. Norman says rumors of Justice's death may be true. Helen got angry and said that he should be more careful with his expressions, otherwise she would not let him go so easily. The man says that he is not afraid of her, and that she is nobody without justice. Beatrice, who was ranked second in strength on Team Union, tells them to calm down. She says that they are no longer little children and should not put on this circus at every meeting. But the girl is also concerned that Justice has not appeared for a long time, and thinks that he could be in danger. She turns to Camilla and asks if she has contacted Justice. Camilla replies that Justice needed to go away for a while. Paula, who was second on Team El Condor, says that Camilla is lying because, due to Justice's absence for a long time, she decided to visit his penthouse. And she adds that she saw a pool of blood on the floor. The girl sweated profusely and answered somewhat hesitantly that it was illegal to enter someone else's house. But everyone gathered was interested to know whether what Paula had just said was true. Camilla was in a difficult position, as she could not avoid interrogation if Paula had seen everything. Suddenly, Justice enters the room, confirming that Paula is telling the truth. Camilla didn't expect Lucas to show up, as she had told him to keep a low profile. Justice apologizes to everyone for being absent for so long. He leaned his elbows on the table and said that he could explain to them what had happened. The heroes were surprised by Justice's sudden appearance. Lucas knew he couldn't leave Camilla to their mercy and be found out, so he showed up with the intention of pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. A minute before, Lucas heard the heroes' conversation and in particular what Paula said. After her words, he noticed that the atmosphere in the hall worsened, and the heroes began to whisper. The guy understood that at this rate no one would believe Camilla's words. That's why he decided to appear on stage. Camilla was shocked by Lucas's actions, because if he made even the slightest mistake, he would be exposed. The guy was amazed by the number of heroes who had gathered in this room, and although he was nervous, he had confidence that he could play the role without arousing suspicion, because he studied everything about Justice, from the length of his stride, the timbre of his voice, and even his usual postures. Norman asks Justice where he's been and why there was blood in his house. Lucas decided to tell them that there had been an attempt on his life, since they already knew about the blood in his penthouse. A murmur of discussion and exclamations went through the room as people were surprised that Justice personally spoke about the attempt on his life. Helen was very surprised to hear Justice's words. She says that he should have told her about it, at least, to which the man replies that he couldn't tell her too early. Since the situation was not typical, he and Camilla needed to conduct a thorough investigation. He adds that as soon as he finds any leads, he will immediately notify them about it. Afterwards, he asks Paula who gave her permission to enter his penthouse. The girl squeezed the toy tightly and replied that she was very worried. The hero sighed and said that the investigation would now be much more difficult, since those involved would become much more careful. Paula apologizes for ruining all the plans. Derek says he doesn't believe this story, that someone is capable of attempting on his life. He adds that someone should have noticed such unrest in the city center, and his story should be checked, since Justice could have staged the incident. Paula replies that Justice has no reason to lie and that Derek is simply too meticulous. But he suddenly adds in a serious voice that Justice has begun to let too many villains slip through the cracks, caring only about the safety of citizens. Sigmund agrees with the girl and says that a hero should not worry about 1 or 2 lives when something more serious is at stake. Therefore, based on the above, they suspect that Justice may have made up the incident. Lucas was amazed that these heroes had such a bad relationship that they wanted to tear each other's throats out. Arthur calms everyone down and asks them to stop, saying that Justice has reasons why he cannot tell the whole truth. He adds that they have a more important topic to discuss and suggests moving on to it. Everyone moderated their ardor and curiosity, sighed and fell silent. Lucas was at a loss for words, but luckily they began to discuss other matters. The meeting ended and afterward Lucas set off on his way by car. Camilla tosses him a soda and tells him the guy did a good job. But he says that he started this mess himself when he showed up and made such a hasty decision. The guy replies that everyone would have guessed about Justice's death if he hadn't shown up. A young man asks a girl why everyone is hostile towards Justice. She responds that personal interests are divided into teams. For example, the Guardian team are natural-born protectors who put the safety of citizens first. The El Condor team are undertakers who try to burn villains to ashes by any means possible. The Superhumans team considers themselves outstanding people, and thinks that since they have become heroes, they are the chosen ones. And the Union team is an alliance that pursues only its own interests. Hearing this, Lucas realized that heroes are no different from politicians. The guy also asked what kind of hero Helen is, to which Camilla replies that Helen is a talented young girl who has never lost to anyone, and she is Justice's loyal subordinate. Hearing this, Lucas said that at the moment when he mentioned the assassination attempt, Helen outwardly pretended to be surprised. But if you take a closer look, you can see that she is not at all stunned. He noticed this because his ability is to copy others down to the smallest detail, and he is very sensitive to changes in facial expressions. But for now, it was too early to draw hasty conclusions based on this alone. Finally, they stopped abruptly and the car door opened. Camilla got out of the car and said that the villains began to weaken, and the heroes, on the contrary, became stronger with the appearance of Justice. And she added that the guy will be able to see the end of this era with his own eyes, after watching the mission to exterminate the villains. She says that all teams must take part in this mission, and Justice is no exception. The girl says that after Justice appeared, all the villains' forces were scattered across several strongholds, and today they are clearing out one of them. 4 teams decided to approach from different directions, and Justice was to appear first in the center of the park. Lucas doesn't agree to go and fight the villains alone right away, as it would be suicide. Camilla hands him an earpiece and says that to earn 2 billion you have to work. She reiterates that Justice is the #1 hero, and if he doesn't participate in the mission, then all their work will be in vain. Lucas replies that he wants a premium of 2 billion for risking his life like that. Heroes and villains were in a fierce battle, each wanting to emerge victorious. Arriving in the city, Lucas realized that there was a one-sided battle going on here, and Camilla said over the earpiece that it was because there were more heroes than villains. Ashley suddenly approaches him. She is glad that they met again. The girl is indignant that someone dared to attack Justice and even think about it. He realizes that Ashley is a true fan, and she asks him to tell her if he finds the perpetrator. Suddenly a villain will attack the man, aiming for his head. The girl didn't notice when this guy appeared and didn't have time to use her ability. But Justice dealt with the villain himself, simply by punching him. Lucas didn't use even half of his power to avoid triggering a premature transformation, and he hoped that this would be enough to defeat the weak villains. The next moment he leaves Ashley, telling her that he has things to do and they will talk next time. On his way, the guy encountered villains who wanted to kill him, but he easily defeated them and ran on at full speed. Lucas had no idea that he could copy the abilities of the dead, and if he had known about this from the very beginning, then perhaps his family would still be alive. Suddenly, Camilla interrupts his thoughts and tells him not to waste time fighting, otherwise he might be late. The guy realized that with his new ability he could help other defenseless people. He ran at great speed towards his destination, but suddenly a spear landed in front of him, causing him to slow down. A man named Kaisar appears and says that it would be an honor for him to fight Justice. Lucas doesn't understand who this man is, since he saw him for the first time. Camilla explains to him that this is a villain who kills heroes for fun, and that for now he is too difficult an opponent for him. The guy realized that since he couldn't handle him, he just had to go around him. But Kaisar grabbed him by the neck and threw him down to the ground. And the next moment the villain set up his Colosseum, from which there is no escape. Once he was trapped, the man had no choice but to fight. Justice struck his opponent, but any kind of injury was nothing to him as long as he was in the Colosseum. The villain stabbed him with a spear and didn't understand why everyone was afraid of Justice if he was actually a weakling. The man says that in order to defeat him, the hero must use all his strength. Lucas thought that if he used all his strength, a forced transformation would immediately follow. But he suddenly realized something. Kaisar didn't know whether Justice was holding back or not, but that was a good thing, because if he died, the heroes would stop their advance. But suddenly the man easily caught the spear, stopping it a millimeter away from himself. Lucas realized that a superpower is like a glass of water, and the more you use it, the less water there is in the glass. But the size of Justice's ability was not comparable to a glass, because he had a whole sea at his disposal. The man was full of strength, but he was simply trying to preserve it as long as possible. And from the very beginning, being Justice, it was not necessary to do this. A worried Helen sat in the room, unable to find a place for herself. The secretary asks what happened, and Helen asks her if Justice's report arrived. The girl replies that the report is quite late, and perhaps Kaisar is in the way. The girl stood up to go, as she doubted that the villain would be able to delay Justice for so long. Helen wanted to see for herself what had actually happened. The villain, looking at Justice again, saw that he seemed to have become a different person. Lucas realized that each time he was forcibly holding back the power in his body and causing a forced transformation, and he wanted to check what would happen if he released her completely. Suddenly, as if at the snap of a finger, the battle became one-sided. Kaisar then added a second layer to the Colosseum to increase his chances of winning. He thought that now he could easily defeat Justice, but the man had never been so wrong in his judgments. The hero, using his strength, destroyed the spear with his bare fist. A man could simply watch the approaching fist and not believe his eyes. He couldn't believe the difference in strength was so great. Lucas breathed a sigh of relief, as it had been quite a dangerous fight for him. The guy turned around at the noise and saw buildings being destroyed. This was the hero from the El Condor team who fought. The young man realized that these were not simple guys because he heard that they were too focused on the villains that they did not notice anyone else in the area. The villain repelled another powerful attack from the hero, and this attack, reflected, hit a nearby building. Lucas realized that the building was about to fall on him, and he had to run away quickly. Kaisar was lying nearby, and the boy thought that he would die if the building fell on him. But this villain tried to kill him, and it shouldn't matter to him whether he dies or not. In his kindness, he nevertheless raised the villain, since he could not watch him die. He hoped that when the villain opened his eyes, he would change, realize how beautiful the white light was, and follow the laws. Along the way, Justice saw buildings collapse one after another. He no longer had time to run away and simply waited for it to fall on him. But suddenly Camilla appeared and said that she would support him at any moment. The girl used her ability and threw the building debris aside. She scolds the guy for deciding to protect the villain, and says that he should be more serious. The guy replies that he couldn't watch a man die before his eyes, and he acted as a benefactor to Justice. Suddenly, the man wakes up and pushes the hero away from him. The villain takes Camilla hostage and demands that she follow all his instructions. The girl tells the man that this is the result of his beneficence. A guy shouldn't neglect the place where Justice stands with such an irresponsible attitude. She adds that it doesn't matter whether she dies or not, but he is obliged not to let Kaisar go. Camilla says that this villain is the main one here, and Justice's authority will fall if he lets him go. Kaisar was furious at being ignored and reminded her that he was going to kill the girl. Lucas says he won't let that happen. The next second, Camilla felt a strong gust of wind. The young man realized that no matter what happens, villains remain villains. The guy says that he will personally deal with the problems that arose because of him. Camilla sighed and said that the guy had high ambitions, but he needed to submit a report. Justice reports that he has arrived at his destination. The man laughed, saying that it wasn't very easy to earn 2 billion won. Camilla knew that Kaisar, although eccentric, was a worthy opponent. And no matter how great Justice's power is, this villain is not one that can be defeated with yesterday's skills. The girl thought that Lucas was just a money-obsessed boy, but suddenly she realized that she could rely on him. From above, on the roof of the building, a man was watching them. That person was Helen from the Guardian team. She felt that something was wrong with Justice in the current situation. When the job was done, Lucas breathed a sigh of relief. He was lucky that after losing self-control, there was no forced transformation. Camilla says she's glad the boy can freely control Justice's power. The young man was a little embarrassed by the fact that the girl became kinder to him. Also, during the mission, Lucas decided to try to see if he could also absorb another person's ability. There was a reaction when touched, but there was an unpleasant response that was reflected in my head. There was definitely a reaction, but nothing more, although for a moment he felt the power being absorbed. And then, halfway through, the process was forcibly broken off. The girl suggests that the guy can only absorb one ability, or that Justice's power itself is too strong. The guy says that it's too early to draw any conclusions, since there's little information, and the girl agrees. Camilla says that in any case they worked hard and deserved a rest. This always happens after the Guardian team wins. Everyone was happy that Justice had appeared and that they had won. Lucas realized that a lot of people believed in him. He took a glass of beer and drank it in one gulp. There were 2 people standing outside the room, looking with disdain at the fun they were having. Derek started to leave and said that their joy would not last long. Norman asks the man if he has a plan, to which he replies that perhaps it is, but in any case, everything will change soon. The next morning in Lucas's new penthouse, he woke up with a terrible hangover and a splitting headache, and he was even ashamed to remember what the heroes had done yesterday. However, when he left his room, he was amazed at the luxury in which he would now live. In addition, 2 billion won were transferred to his account. Lucas is very happy that he has finally achieved unprecedented success. However, it doesn't end there, because Justice was actually killed. On the table lay the autopsy report provided by Camilla. As a result, no injuries were found, but the activation of the ability before death was detected. The guy was very curious to know the truth of what really happened. He heard a noise and thought that Camilla had come to discuss the details of the document, but to his surprise it was Helen. The guy hid behind the chair and didn't understand what Helen was doing there, and why she was showing up here as if it was her home. Helen calls for Mr. Justice because she heard his voice. She asked what he was doing there, hiding behind the chair. Lucas transformed into Justice and pretended to be training. Helen was very happy to see the man and praised him for his perseverance and discipline. The girl heard that there had been repeated assassination attempts and that this needed to be discussed, so she came. Finally, the young man understands why Helen was cold-blooded at that moment. Suddenly, the girl hugged Justice, and she said that it was too much when he didn't even say anything to her. The guy couldn't understand what was happening and asked Helen what she was doing. The girl recalls that she asked him to call her Helenochka when they were alone. Now Lucas realized that the two had a romantic relationship. Justice dated Helen, but there was no mention of it in the archives. So Justice decided to hide the fact of their relationship. The girl asks why he is silent, but Lucas didn't know what to answer. He decided that just calling her by her first name would be okay. Justice apologized to Helen and justified himself by saying that he forgot, because he rarely calls her that in public. The girl, hearing this, was serious at first, but then she smiled. Helen says she feels hurt because he doesn't change his attitude towards her, even in private. She adds that this made her feel awkward. The next moment, the girl attacked the guy with lightning speed with her sword. The girl turned cold and said that at first she even believed that he really was Justice. Lucas was very surprised, as he had almost lost his life a second ago. Helen says she'll cut off his hands before asking questions. The girl, along with Justice, is a member of the Guardian team and holds the position of second in command, and she was born with an ability, a very powerful one. This ability was called Speedaster, which means super high acceleration. The entire interior of the house was cut very precisely and carefully. The guy realized that the girl had honed her movements to perfection. Helen attacked again, and Lucas activated his ability, asking her to wait. The girl is a little surprised that the guy was able to copy even Justice's ability, but he adds that they are wasting their strength and energy in vain. The guy understands that he can't continue in the same spirit and he needs to come up with something, so he decided that he needed to attack back and use the ability. Helen now understood how he had defeated Kaisar, and she says it was only the result of a clumsy waste of strength. However, the same tricks will not work on her. The girl launched a series of attacks with lightning speed and inflicted significant damage to Justice's body. Helen says that he will never defeat her if he continues to fight in this manner, and she will cut him in the most merciless way if he resists, but if he falls on his face, the pain will end. The guy doesn't agree to her terms, and the girl goes on the attack. She pierces him in the chest with a sword and blood gushed from the wound. Lucas says he couldn't land a single hit on the girl because of her speed, but now she won't be able to move because he grabbed her hand. Even though the guy hit her in the head, he couldn't even knock her out. Lucas was very surprised, as he had calculated every newton of his strength to send the girl to sleep. The man had a bad feeling, so he decided that he needed to deliver another series of blows before it was too late. In an instant, the girl standing in front of him disappeared from sight. Helen asks the guy to stop resisting, as he is delaying the inevitable. She will take his hands away anyway. The girl used her ultimate ability, destruction of the enemy of humanity, 1,000 blows. Lucas found himself under pressure. With each passing second, he received a new blow from the sword. And at this rate, he really could have been cut into small pieces. Suddenly, a new ability appeared in their intense fight. Helen realizes that this ability is familiar to her. It was Camilla. She said that she knew that Helen was very sensitive towards justice, but she didn't think that she would figure it out so quickly. The girl understands that Camilla was also involved in this matter and asks her to explain everything. Then she decided not to delay, but to say directly that Mr. Justice was killed. Helen realizes with horror that Justice was killed, and they staged this costume circus so as not to shock others. Camilla says they had no choice but to act quickly to prevent this death from causing more problems. The girl replies that it was too noticeable. Even though the guy has Justice's abilities, he absolutely does not know how to use them. Camilla says she understands everything, but now it is much more important to buy as much time as possible. Lucas agrees because in order to investigate Justice's death, they needed to clean up the mess. The girl says that this is absurd and the killer could come back to kill them both. The guy says it's unlikely the killer will return, since they are the only ones who know about Justice's death. The girls don't understand what he's talking about and ask why he decided that. Because yesterday there was a complete mass murder of villains, but so far there has been no reaction to it. Helen asks that even though it is unknown who the killer is, will he think that there was a failure in his murder? The guy says that it's unlikely, to which the girl simply sighs. The girl decided to leave to take a walk and put her thoughts in order. Helen was the only one who followed Justice faithfully, and now she's probably in a mess. And now she has become the only link in the Guardian team. Since Justice used to keep track of the team's routine, now in his absence the heroes might scatter, leaving Helen alone. Camilla was indignant because such people were not worthy of being called heroes, and they were no different from a flock of sheep that needed to be led. That's why they must carry out their plan at any cost, so that the heroes do not abandon their posts and hope burns in the hearts of the people. Lucas finally understood why Camilla got involved in this adventure. Suddenly, the girl received a message and told the guy to get ready for the second mission. They came to the dining room and the guy couldn't start eating because everyone was looking at him. Everyone was surprised by his appearance and wondered why he was there. The man doesn't understand what he needs to do. To which the girl replies that everything has already been done. She explains that there was recently an attempt on his life and he needs to show everyone that he is okay. The guy understood, but it was hard for him to pretend that he was simply eating in front of everyone. The girl tells him to get used to it, but in the future this will happen less. Today is a special day when initiation takes place among heroes. Camilla pointed to the heroes who were heading to the biggest event in Artium. In this event, heroes decide which of 4 teams they can join, and it is similar to an open day at universities. Justice realized the enormity of this event and asked what he should do. Camilla replies that they need to go, and she will tell them everything on the way. After a while, they came to a large stadium. Lucas was so surprised that he involuntarily made a sound of admiration. The girl tells him to be calm, otherwise someone might think that Justice is scared. Camilla says he doesn't have to do anything, answering the question that's been bothering him. She adds that the strongest hero does not need to prove his strength in the arena. He just has to sit quietly and watch what's going on. Looking at the number of people in the ranks of the respective teams, one could draw a conclusion. Guardian has lost its value compared to the Union and the Inhumans team. Each team member has tremendous power, and it is not surprising that they want to use it for their own purposes. Suddenly they saw Helen coming to them. She sat down next to them and said that she just decided to play along with them, but she was still not on their side. Lucas doesn't understand why there's so much hostility, since he wasn't the one who killed Justice. Finally, the performance began and two heroes entered the arena. The match between the Guardian and the Superhumans teams began. As soon as the command was given, the heroes entered the fight. Adam activated his ability and attacked Jack in the stomach. Jack was thrown back by the force of the blow, and he praised his opponent for his dexterity and speed of movement. The next moment, the men continued their battle. Lucas didn't understand why the heroes were fighting, to which Camilla replied that it was some kind of PR for their team to attract people. Justice says that then it's just a friendly match to show off his strength, to which the girl said that these matches could hardly be called friendly. Meanwhile, in the arena, Adam knocked Jack to the ground and broke his wrist. Lucas couldn't watch this and stood up, telling them to wait. But Camilla stops him, reminding him that she told him not to do anything. While there is some bullying, these fights are fierce battles for power between teams. So in essence, he is not doing anything illegal, and even Justice has no right to interfere. Adam asks why Jack doesn't give up. Is he really expecting both his hands to be injured? But then he apologizes, because he realized that he couldn't give up while his hand was chained to the floor. Adam says he might start breaking his arms, but suddenly someone's hand stops him. The girls were surprised and could not understand what this boy was doing. Lucas entered the arena because he remembered his younger sister, who admired heroes. She believed that only thanks to heroes could they live safely and peacefully. And he couldn't watch Adam grin as he beat up a hero just like him. Justice says he should be ashamed of his behavior. Adam doesn't understand what he's talking about and replies that he has no right to interfere. The guy asks what the #1 hero will do if he doesn't listen to him. Adam decided to attack Justice with his ability, because it could control gravity and enhance magical power. He was about to blow up the would-be hero who had so carelessly grabbed his hand, but Justice simply squeezed his hand, dealing damage and preventing him from activating the ability. The man says Adam could have simply let Jack surrender and not crippled him. Derek suddenly appears and saves a hero from his team from Justice. Derek activates his ability and pushes Justice back. He says that the #1 hero needs to fight someone of his own level. The newcomers were surprised that at the very beginning they would be able to see a fight between legends. Helen stood up from her seat and wanted to stop the fight by any means necessary. Camilla also understood that Lucas could hardly control Justice's power. Given how he used this power before, he had no chance of winning against Derek. Justice says that they don't need to fight and they can resolve this peacefully. But the man does not agree, since his authority will suffer if he backs down now. Lucas realized that there was nowhere to go, and he went on the attack, activating the ability. Derek blocked his punch and said that Justice had forgotten something. The boy felt the strength leaving his body and could not understand what was happening. Derek activated his ability and said that it was now his turn to strike. Justice managed to block the blow with his hands, but in the process he injured his hand. All the attacks he made on the man were useless, and he simply fought back and fought back. The battle was one-sided. Lucas realized that Derek could project his own attack. The man said Justice was losing his grip and had become somewhat weak. The guy just took one blow after another. The watching heroes couldn't understand what was happening, and why Justice was allowing himself to be beaten. Derek's ability is to absorb other people's powers. He absorbs any power of the enemy. Afterwards, he attacks with the same force, but with a multiplier, adding his own strength to the other person's. No matter how strong the attack is, it will only harm its owner. Camilla knew that if things continued like this, Justice would lose in disgrace in a ridiculously one-sided fight. Derek asked the guy why he wasn't doing anything. He questioned whether the person standing in front of him was the #1 hero, the pride of the Guardian team. Lucas understood that if this continued, everyone might suspect something, and he had turned off his brain in vain, relying on his feelings. If he had simply followed Camilla's instructions, he would have easily received the 2 billion won and wouldn't have ended up in this situation. The man asks how long he plans to be a punching bag. However, he could not watch the false hero behave in a completely unheroic manner. At the moment of the collision, Lucas had an idea on how to defeat Derek. The man finally saw that Justice had started to fight and told him that if he tried harder, they might have a draw. But suddenly he saw Justice approaching him. Lucas knew he wasn't even close to the real Justice. But still, in any situation there is a way out. And here too there was a way to win. And that method consisted of directing such a flow of magic that Derek would be unable to absorb it. The arena began to collapse from the sudden surge of enormous force from the two men. A very strong shockwave arose, covering all the spectators. Camilla was surprised that the guy started to succeed. But if everything is left as is, the atrium will disintegrate into atoms. Suddenly the men felt a lot of pressure from the outside. They stopped fighting and were pulled towards the ground. Lucas didn't understand why his body suddenly felt so heavy. The man who intervened was Arthur. He told them to stop and look around. Lucas knew this guy. He was from the Union team. Arthur sighed and cancelled his ability, telling them to stop being childish and not do such things in places like this anymore. Derek walked back to his seat with a scowl. Jack bowed to Justice and thanked him for saving him. People were surprised by the fight, and everyone admired Justice. They said that if he had not been stopped, Derek would have suffered greatly. Lucas breathed a sigh of relief and was glad that everything worked out. The next day at Justice's penthouse, Helen brought a list of heroes who had joined the 4 teams. Camilla says that thanks to Lucas's antics, the situation in the atrium has improved. But Guardian still ranks last in terms of the number of newcomers. The guy asks if there is really that big a difference between the teams. Helen replies that not quite, and although their hero lost, it didn't matter much. Because in the current situation, when the villains have been significantly weakened, there is still no one who would consciously want to join the Guardian. And at this rate, all power will be concentrated in the hands of the already famous Superhumans team. Lucas asks what the problem is if they have a lot of powers. Camilla reminds him that while they have immense power, they act no better than villains. Then the guy thoughtfully asks why they don't create their own alliance. The girl says that there is no one to even take into the alliance, since El Condor is too radical. The Superhumans are immediately excluded and only the Union team remains. In conclusion, there was an option to invite only them, if they themselves were not the initiators. Lucas asks the girls what's so difficult about it. He adds that it might be difficult to transform into 2 people at once. The girls don't understand what he's getting at. The next moment, he shows them the phone and says he will do it, but only for the salary of the #1 hero. In the evening, there was a party with a large number of people on the roof of the hotel. People were relaxing and having fun. Some were swimming and some were dancing. Lucas asks why they came to such a place late at night. She replies that William, who was ranked 3rd among the Union team members, is here. Unlike other teams, Team Union's rank is determined not by a hero's strength, but by their popularity. Although he is hardly a hero, thanks to the parties he throws, he has many connections. And today there is supposed to be a vote in which William will take part, and Lucas needs to falsify the result. Camilla doubts that the guy will succeed and asks what he plans to do. The guy says that this is not one of those things that is worthy of praise. And looking at the girl in a swimsuit, an idea already came to him. Finally, William showed up at the party and everyone was happy to see him. William addresses the people and says that there is an amazing party tonight. And he also reminded them that there was no law that required them to engage in the routine of saving people every day. He suggests forgetting about all worries and having fun until the morning. Thomas says that William has had enough alcohol for today, to which he replies that he hasn't even started. Looking at the man, he asks why he dressed like that. The guy replies that it is appropriate for him to dress like that because he is his servant. William says it's just a waste of a beautiful face and complains that he's been assigned such a dull boy. Suddenly, a girl bumps into him and spills a drink on his clothes. William gets angry because his clothes were expensive and tells the girl to watch her step. Leslie says she didn't notice the guy because she had too much to drink. She offers to help him clean his clothes, to which William replies that it is nothing to worry about and that such things happen. The girl does not agree to this, and says that she would really like to clean this stain in a secluded place. The guy says that if she really wants it, then nothing can be done. He leaves Thomas and tells him to keep order in his absence. The guy enters the password and the door to his luxury room opens. But before William could ask anything, Leslie used her ability. And the next moment, she knocked him out with one blow. Naturally, it was Lucas who transformed himself into a girl to deceive William. The guy immediately started looking for the tablet on which the conference was supposed to take place. When I found it, the tablet had retina and fingerprint recognition. Although you wouldn't know it from William, he was quite careful. But he was lucky that there was no password, so he transformed into William and easily unlocked the tablet. Arthur was surprised that William showed up at the conference so early. The man got straight to the point and reminded them that at this meeting they had to decide whether to cooperate with the Guardian team. Everything will be decided by the vote of each person. Arthur had 1,479 votes, Beatrice 1,326, and William had 985. Lucas was surprised by how everything was set up in Team Union. It didn't seem like a vote, but rather an entertainment show. The guy understood that William's voice could influence the outcome. Everyone voted quickly, and Arthur was a little surprised. Afterwards, he said that since they had unanimously made a decision, they would act in accordance with it. Lucas logged out of the conference and breathed a sigh of relief. Camilla was waiting for him outside, and she asked how everything went, to which the guy replies that it is a success, and he has done work worth $2 billion. In his room, William woke up and admitted that he had had a little too much to drink. Thomas asks if the man really doesn't remember anything. William says it's true, as the intimacy with such a beauty must have been incredible, and he even managed to take part in the conference. He says that as soon as he opened the tablet, he noticed that he had already cast his vote. William asks who the girl was and if Thomas has her contact information. Thomas guessed something and asks William for a list of all the guests present yesterday. The next morning, Lucas decided to completely revise his wardrobe, as he needed to fully match Justice's style and preferences. Looking into the closet, he saw the complete opposite. None of his things fit at all. Camilla added that it is necessary to change not only appearance, but also all habits, communication style, and behavior. Helen looked at all this with a displeased expression on her face. It seemed she still didn't like this idea of substitution. Lucas, throwing all the things out of the closet, remembered that now he has become incredibly rich and can buy anything. Suddenly he notices a photo in a frame. Having picked up the photo, the main character's expression suddenly changes. He falls to his knees and carefully examines everything that is depicted on it. The photograph shows his entire family, happy and carefree at the time, relaxing. They recall that they had just left the cinema. Lucas had completely forgotten that he had hidden it in the closet so as not to remember what happened that day. His gaze showed longing for his family. Thinking about how wonderful it would be if his little sister could see him transform into Justice, she would be delighted. Just when I thought about taking the photograph with me, the frame breaks and it flies straight under the bed. Unhappy with his clumsiness, Lucas tries to lift the bed and, miscalculating his new enormous strength, throws the bed up like a feather. There is a look of fear and surprise on his face as to how he managed to pull this off. A little later, in the office, the protagonist and Camilla discuss what happened at home. Lucas says that the surge of strength suddenly began this morning, and he excitedly says that he does not know what is happening to him, picking up a pen and breaking it as soon as he touched it. Camilla suggests that he somehow became more sensitive to Justice's abilities and his superpowers began to awaken. With a stupid expression on his face, Lucas asks how this is possible, since he can only copy the appearance and get a little power from it. Then his interlocutor began to explain that, like human muscles, the more often he used his superpowers, the stronger he would become. And now it was time to get to work. In the blink of an eye, the main character turns into Justice, and it's time for the conference in which the main superheroes participate. Arthur apologizes for forcing everyone to gather and get in touch so suddenly. The fact is that he urgently needs to go on a business trip. Norman, eager to get to the heart of the matter, says mockingly that they currently have only one main topic on the agenda: a more productive distribution of our forces. The team leader says that everything is correctly noted. The conversation will be about this. El Condor decided to form an alliance with the Guardian team. Hearing his statement, Norman angrily expresses indignation at how everything was suddenly decided so quickly and how they came to this. As if not noticing his attacks, Arthur continues, "All decisions depend on the results of the vote and, as it turns out, the majority believes that now, more than ever, it is necessary to concentrate on catching the remaining villains." Even more angry, Norman says that this is all nonsense and he doesn't like this idea. Suddenly, Sigmund, squeezing the bandit's head, asks why he is verbally concentrating on catching the villains. He suddenly began to express his dissatisfaction, whether there are good reasons for this. Jumping at the question, Norman replies that as a result of the last mission, the villain's main base was destroyed. Then Justice says to stop arguing, it's a waste of time. His thoughts on this situation are fundamentally different, and clearing the main camp does not provide any guarantee of complete elimination of the enemy. Helen calmly adds that she completely agrees and is in solidarity with the head's opinion. With the same displeasure on his face, Norman wants to object, but his objections are immediately cut off by Derek. And in a languid voice, he says that the decision was unanimous. How can one object to the opinion of the entire team? The complete destruction of the villains will bring peace and tranquility. This time, he supports the intentions of the Guardian. To his own surprise, Lucas in Justice's body thinks about how everything came to this squabble between the heroes. The end of the negotiations is approaching. Returning to Lucas's rented apartment, Camilla looks in surprise at the hole in the ceiling that appeared after the unsuccessful prank. She wonders how he will justify himself to the apartment owner, and whether he has any thoughts on this matter. While throwing out the trash, the main character replies that he will simply give her a wad of money, thinking that this will solve the problem. But the important thing is that from the day he first contacted him, some unknown bullshit began to happen. He adds, asking why Camilla is helping him sort all this out. After all, they have a normal market relationship. He works in exchange for money, so why is she worried about him? In response, Camilla says that it is in her best interest for everything to be all right, because as long as Justice is alive, all the heroes will behave as they really should. But there is another reason. This reason is a little personal. Realizing that she said too much, she quickly puts on her hood and moves towards the exit. Thinking that he had said something unnecessary, Lucas frowned, but did not find out what she meant, and it would be better for him not to ask about it in the near future. Coming out onto the terrace, they notice with alarm that the same security guard who was at the party with William is standing there. Camilla recognizes him and says that this is Thomas from the Union team, wondering what he is doing here. Smiling as if nothing had happened, Thomas remarks how unexpected it is to cross paths with them in such a place. Camilla reasons that he clearly didn't come for no reason and why she is here. Thomas suddenly turns around and stares at Lucas. suddenly declaring that he knows about his copying abilities, and Lucas freezes in fear. Trying to lighten the mood, he remarks with a smile on his face that this is a rather interesting ability and he likes it. Then, in an instant, the smile on his face disappears and he asks why he came to the party yesterday, since he wasn't invited. Feeling something was wrong, Lucas shyly denies it and says that he doesn't understand what they're talking about. Yesterday he spent the whole evening doing housework. Interrupting the brazen lie, Thomas claims that he cannot avoid answering, since all the surveillance cameras have been viewed and indicate the opposite. One of the cameras clearly shows that he has transformed into a girl. After which he did everything that was planned, returned to his previous appearance and calmly left the hotel. Then Lucas realized that he had missed one camera and began to declare that everything was not as he thought. He had just gotten drunk and accidentally bumped into William, and he began to seduce him. Assuming it was just an incredible coincidence, Thomas said, "Well, that means I was just being paranoid." Suddenly his face became terrifying, and he asked a rhetorical question about how Lucas would explain his transformation into Justice. Out of fear and fear of being exposed, both froze and Thomas continued. He can't be sure, but there is an assumption. Before he could finish speaking, his hand lightning fast rips out a tooth. Blood gushes from his mouth, but there is not a drop of pain on his face. "I don't understand what's happening," jumping back. "No one understands what's happening. Why all this?" Then their guest, without losing his advantage, with a light movement of his fingers launches his tooth with furious force. Flying over them, it turns into a huge dome. Everyone stands in a stupor from fear and cannot do anything. The next moment, the dome covers Camilla, which terrifies the protagonist and leaves him in confusion. At this moment, a bone resembling a sharp blade appears from Thomas's hands and he demands to return to the conversation. He is ready to achieve the truth even at the cost of his life. Not understanding the essence of what is happening, Lucas shouts questioningly for him to stop and why he needs this. Looking at his hand, from which a bone blade is visible, Thomas calmly says that, as he mentioned earlier, he wants to check something. Lately, he had begun to notice significant changes in Justice's behavior, even considering the assassination attempt that everyone had been told about. Comparing the facts yields two non-obvious results. He suggests that perhaps Camilla, Justice's favorite student, has among her acquaintances a person who can copy someone else's appearance, and this person is now standing in front of him. Having just finished speaking, Thomas rushes at Lucas with incredible speed and glancingly wounds his neck with his weapon. The wound is not deep, but it still causes discomfort. This action replaces fear with anger and determination. Then, with rage in his eyes, the protagonist screams in bewilderment as to why the heroes, even in such a situation, cannot avoid disunity. In response to this, Thomas says that even a child with primitive thinking could expose his evil intentions, and he is waiting for an explanation. Lucas's eyes filled with anger. Sparks appeared around his body. Lightning began to flow from his hands. He said that he was tired of all this. Having seen those variabilities of Justice, Thomas did not understand how he managed it. Apparently, he did not foresee this and did not think that everything had gone so far. Then he decides to get to the truth in another way. The same blade appears from his second hand, and an ominous atmosphere reigns around. Then a thought pops into Lucas's head that if he tells the truth, he will lose all his money. And what's worse, perhaps it was this scoundrel with the blades who killed Justice. But it didn't matter anymore. The fists began to fill with a force that was difficult to even contain. He lunges at his opponent, but the latter, with a sharp and precise movement, pushes Lucas's hand away and redirects the powerful blow to the side. He also noted that he didn't know how to control such enormous power, which was a pity, since if he had Justice's power, he would have controlled it much better. Smiling, the main character says that he sees disappointment on his face, and that he is probably very upset that he does not have such strength. In response to this, Thomas furiously declares that he is too irresponsible in everything and uses her only to satisfy his desires, after which he rushes forward. Thomas nearly pierces the protagonist's skull with a swift lunge and knocks him down, but Lucas manages to stop the blade at the last moment. The forces are clearly not equal. A little more and everything will end disastrously. In an instant, Lucas throws his opponent away and grabs him tightly by the arms, not allowing him to even move. Thomas suddenly notices and says that he seems to be fighting at full strength but still can't wake up. Not understanding what he was saying, the guy wonders what it means to wake up and why it was said. He doesn't know that awakening can increase his stats and make him much stronger. But a hero's strength grows from his truest intentions, and only then can he shine brighter than others. Thomas clenches his teeth and yells that it is obvious how ineptly he is wasting the power he was given, not even knowing about the awakening. There is still a lot of misunderstanding in Lucas's eyes. Looking straight into his eyes, Thomas continues, "Does the boy really think that holding the opponent's hands will be enough to win?" After which he says that he can spread his power to any part of his body. at which moment huge tusks emerge from his elbows, which Lucas miraculously dodges. After which he throws himself at the offender with all his might, because he remembers that Camila is still in this cocaine and no one knows what is wrong with her. Everything needs to be resolved as quickly as possible. Thomas is taken by surprise and doesn't understand what's happening, loses his mind for a second, and then comes to his senses again, at which point he receives a blow. The force of the blow was miscalculated, causing Lucas's knee to feel like it was on fire and he was writhing in pain. Then comes the question of which part of the human body has the strongest bone. But Lucas doesn't seem to hear it, standing on one knee and bursting with pain. Then Thomas himself, answering his own question, says that the answer is outrageously simple. In the skull, his face is covered with a bony mask. He really irritates Lucas. But he admits he's right, and his forgetfulness, well, that will be remembered forever. Despite all this, Thomas understands and thinks to himself that during the entire fight he was unable to land a single blow. What is hidden in this boy? Having risen, the protagonist pulls himself together, takes a deep breath, and decides to put an end to this confrontation. Before, he was only concerned with conspiracy. He wanted to quickly finish everything he had been drawn into. However, ever since he failed to protect his family, Lucas has constantly hated himself for not having the strength to protect the people he loved. Thinking about this, the boy does not notice how the enemy came close to him and said that he would not be able to scratch him and it was time to surrender. Thomas was right. Even with Justice's power to be dealt with, there was still little chance. But despite this, there was still hope. Charging his fist to full power, making everything around him pale in comparison, Lucas strikes. The blow flies past Thomas and he, pointing the blade at the back of his opponent's head, mockingly exclaims that he warned him, their strength is incomparable. Turning around with fire in his eyes and a wide smile, the guy says that he wasn't aiming at him at all. A broken cocaine can be seen behind him. Camila is freed. In a matter of seconds, Thomas's entire body is enveloped in shadow tentacles, immobilizing him without giving him a chance to come to his senses. Camila thanks him for the release and is going to ask the ill-wisher a couple of questions. But before that, she's going to beat the crap out of him. It seems he can't free himself. Now all he can do is wait for his fate. Being trapped in a bone cocoon has made the Mistress of Shadows incredibly angry. The madness in her eyes is terrifying. Thomas seems to be at a loss and doesn't know what to expect next. The shadows are squeezing his body more and more. But the whole situation suddenly turns upside down and a bone suddenly appears from the forearm, which easily cuts through the shackles. The intruder says that he already mentioned how his abilities work. Bones can appear from any part of his body, even if he himself is immobilized. Without thinking twice, Camila releases a stream of several shadows to prevent the enemy from being released. But he suddenly puts up a block from a pile of bone tissue and easily cuts through all the obstacles in his path. It seems he is unstoppable. Breaking off the sharpest blade from his body, Thomas launches it, hoping to wound or at least confuse the attacker. The blade almost hits Camilla's head, easily digging into the wall. She is not discouraged. It seems that just a little more and everything would have ended fatally. Taking advantage of his opponent's confusion and distraction, Thomas delivers another blow, and it seems this swing will definitely hit the target. It turns out that everything is not so simple. Being in amazing shape and having quick reactions, Camila, using a shadow portal, ends up behind the enemy. Lucas stands wide-eyed, watching this mind-blowing fight. The level of the fighters in this battle is quite high. This guy is fighting on par with Justice's own student. Assessing the situation, Thomas realizes that his opponent is quickly closing the distance and attacking with shadows from a safe distance so he can do the same. Having pulled out another tooth, with a sharp movement imperceptible to the average person, a bone projectile is torn from his hands like a live cartridge. This time it splits in two and several traps are already flying from above. It will not be easy to dodge such a trap. Saying he can't pull the same dirty trick twice, Camila sharpens her point and cuts through her opponent's attack. At this moment, she notices that Thomas has disappeared from sight. Where did he go in such a short period of time? The justice student's gaze darts from side to side, trying to find the intruder, but her attempts are futile. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a threat appears from above, but the shadows can anticipate the enemy's movements and instinctively protect their mistress. She jumps back sharply and launches dark purple stripes at the landing site of Thomas. This could be the end. Despite the precise hit, he manages to precisely construct a bone shield on his chest, which easily repels the attack. Crouching down, gathering all the shadows in the area, causing the entire building to tremble, Camila says that he managed to make her fight seriously. With a sharp movement of both hands, a clot of ominous energy rises upward, obeying the movements of the mistress, her gaze becoming even more terrifying. Enormous shadows appear above Thomas's head in the form of a mouth made of waves, inspiring horror. This is one of the most powerful abilities called a shadow tsunami. If it falls on him, It will be hard. This entire incredible clot of energy covers a huge area of the building. A little more and everything will collapse. The ability slightly affects the enemy, but he miraculously escapes thanks to bone armor. And at that very moment, Thomas appears behind Camilla, with the last of his strength, concentrating all his strength in his hand, trying to deliver the final blow. Lucas, rushing to help, fearing for his mentor, tries to warn her, shouting her name. Just before the attack ends, Justice's student, with a carefree expression on her face, reports a shadow behind her that will pierce Thomas at any moment. After this news, he freezes. In a commanding tone, Camilla says that it is time to stop. It is clearly evident that from the very beginning, the stranger did not try to kill anyone. Lucas can't understand at all what's going on here, because the enemy almost killed them a couple of times. In fact, it would have been easy for Thomas to take away their ability to breathe with just one touch. But this did not happen. What are his real goals? Confirming everything that has been said, the guy says that, given the circumstances, the case of Justice's murder, which was mentioned at the meeting, was not at all unsuccessful. Justice is really dead. Taking a flash drive out of his pocket, he claims that it contains footage of Lucas's transformation into the leader of all heroes, and that he will have a lot of difficulties with this material. If this is revealed, then the copy hero will be considered a murderer by everyone, and then his end will come immediately. Finishing the sentence, Thomas snaps the flash drive with a snap of his fingers. In amazement, Lucas does not understand why he did this, unless his goal is blackmail. Then the guy, with a charming smile, declares that he has no reason to oppose them. Their interests are similar, although everything looks different. Camilla asks what he means, to which Thomas replies that although he was previously a member of Team Union, he is now a spy for Team El Condor. This news leaves Lucas and Camilla frozen in place, unable to utter a word. Then Thomas continues, talking about how at the moment Guardian and El Condor are greatly inferior in strength to the Inhumans team. Once the epidemic of villains faded into the background, everyone began to care only about their own interests, earning more and becoming richer. So Thomas was given the task of infiltrating the Union and causing chaos within the team, but he also needed allies with whose help he could carry out his work smoothly. Lucas seems to begin to understand the whole point of the matter, after which he tries to make sure what exactly he means. Then the new guest says that everything is correct. The three of them will join the Union and arrange a judgment day there. Camilla still didn't trust Thomas, and asked how they knew that the data on the flash drive was the only version, and that there might be a copy somewhere. In response to this, he replies that he really likes Lucas's skills. They can be used in many places, and as for the mistrust, he will not persuade them, and if they do not agree, they will become competitors and will definitely lose. Surprised by the boy's incredible self-confidence, the student and Justice's replacement did not know what to say. Then, angry, Lucas objected that it was inappropriate to say this now, even though he was simply playing the role of Justice. The main goal remained to find those who killed him. Having entered into an alliance, Thomas would have to help them in this matter. The silver-haired guy replied that he understood everything perfectly and agreed, since then he might get a chance to personally finish off the vile killer Justice, and that sounded cool. The protagonist then thought that if Thomas was a member of El Condor's team, he madly hated villains, and this could mean that he would be quite suitable for them as an ally. Tired of waiting for an answer, he forces them to decide quickly whether they are for him or against him. Camilla and Lucas exchanged glances. It seemed that the girl liked her comrade's attitude and was leaving the decision to him, but first they needed to hear what Thomas had planned. The guest, looking at the well-coordinated work of this couple in choosing a solution, simply smiles. It seems they agree. A little later, a security guard at Team Union's combat headquarters carefully examines the protagonist's ID, pronouncing his name and comparing the photo on the document to his real-life self. Seeing that the situation is tense, Lucas says that he is new and has just joined the team, and they let him through. Heaving a sigh of relief, he remembers that he had been sitting over this certificate all night. His hand was very tired from the painstaking work. He had to try hard. The feel of the heroes in the Union team is definitely different from the Guardians. Everything is so relaxed, there is no distinctive dress code, since at their core they are pursuing only their own goals. Seeing a familiar figure, Lucas seems to freeze, unable to take his eyes off him. Camilla appears in front of him in an unusual outfit for herself. She is wearing a fitted blouse and jeans, and the hood that constantly covered her face has disappeared. She uttered only one phrase, having found out why he was staring so much. Then the protagonist answers too directly that right now one can definitely say that Camilla is charming. Angry and a little embarrassed, she shouts that she doesn't even want to hear such phrases anymore. In fact, she's not used to receiving compliments since she's usually in a completely closed outfit. Pushing Lucas with her shoulder, the enraged student of Justice quickly walked forward, calling out to her partner, but telling him to grit his teeth and not say anything unnecessary before doing so. Ahead of them, some popular personality was taking pictures with fans with a happy expression on his face. Lucas recognized her and said that it was Ivy. He heard that she also debuted as a hero and immediately decided to become a newcomer to the Union team. Ivy was a popular food blogger, very popular. Her live broadcasts attracted hundreds of thousands of viewers. Camilla assumes that most heroes who join Team Union do so for commercial purposes, and that she is most likely just here for some good PR. Interrupting their conversation, the always smiling Thomas calls out to them, waves his hand, and is happy that they have finally met. Looking at him, Camilla claims that the plan actually doesn't look that bad, even though it was thought up by this strange smiling guy. By quickly increasing your popularity within Team Union, you can exercise your right to vote. Neither career nor abilities are important. Everything depends on how much the hero attracts public attention. Lucas asks his partner if she won't arouse suspicion, even though she was part of the Guardian team just yesterday, even though she knows how to gain popularity in Union. Having overheard the conversation and come closer, Thomas confidently declares that there is a way, and will tell about it soon. A little later, our heroes find themselves at a lecture on abilities. The teacher explains that any ability is based on what is called manifestation. Depending on the manifestation, the same ability can be used differently, that is, manifest differently, giving different abilities. Continuing the lecture, the teacher explains that in rare cases it happens that the manifestation proceeds a little differently than expected. This usually happens when abilities first awaken. And almost certainly, all this will lead to the person losing control of themselves, falling into a rage and not realizing their actions. An example is shown in the photo. In this state, a person almost completely loses his mind and acquires threatening, incredible strength, and his brain begins to function only on reflexes. Adding to what has been said, the teacher states that such people periodically become targets for the hero's hunt, and if anyone present is interested in such a hunt, they can receive a similar task. The vast majority of the class didn't understand why anyone would be interested in this, as it was incredibly dangerous and not worth the effort. The teacher, as he thought, didn't expect any newcomers to volunteer, although that's understandable, since this isn't the Guardian or El Condor team, and he continues his lecture. But suddenly, quite unexpectedly, a shout is heard from the hall and Lucas's raised hand is visible. He says that their group wants to take part in this. Surprised, the teacher with the eye patch cannot remember the last time one of the new students agreed to this kind of assignment. Everyone around Lucas started whispering and laughing. The bravest even asked what was wrong with him and whether his team agreed with this decision. Looking at Thomas, he found out if he had made a mistake. In response, the guy said that everything was fine. However, it would be difficult for a beginner, but with Justice's power it would be no more difficult than defeating a child. A little later, Camilla brings the protagonist to Justice's abode and favorite training room. The room looks quite spacious, even too spacious. At the entrance, the girl asks why he asked to be brought here, what he had in mind. Then Lucas's expression suddenly became serious. He remembered the battle with Kaisar and said that it was a matter of strength. In the battle with Kaisar, everything happened by itself, because Justice's strength was colossal. And in the confrontation with Derek in the arena, he would not have coped if the fight had not been interrupted. Continuing, he added that Helen was right. Up until this point, he had only thought about profit and money, but now his goals were something more. A memory from his birthday came to mind, when the whole family was together. They were happy and carefree. That day, Lucas decided to make his little beloved sister happy, knowing that she desperately wanted to see the hero named Nolan. The girl truly loved this hero and always followed his accomplishments. Her eyes were wide open. She froze in anticipation of a miracle. A second later, the very same hero Nolan appears before her eyes. Lucas trained for weeks specifically to make sure everything went perfectly. The little sister was beside herself with joy and admiration. Her dream had come true thanks to her brother, whom she loved madly. The wonderful moment is suddenly interrupted by some entity appearing behind. At one point, the table where the parents were sitting flies into the air. It seems they died on the spot. The girl began to cry from fear and clung to her brother. Lucas himself was also frightened and stunned. Not understanding what was happening, he stared at the villain. A huge pile of purple muscle with 4 eyes and a twisted mouth looked at them and was glad that he had finally found a hero to compete with. Lucas had never seen the villain so close, and for a moment he seemed frozen to the ground and couldn't move. But the thought that he has a sister nearby who needs to be protected brings him to his senses. The guy immediately stands in front of her and covers her with his body. Deciding that he needs to pull himself together or else little Sona will die just like his parents, Lucas resolutely rushes at the hero hoping to win. But everything turned out differently. The enemy, with one light movement of his paw, strikes him with a backhand, after which the boy flies 10 meters away and seems unable to even get up. Hitting the tree hard, his transformation began to wear off and his true, exhausted face began to show through the mask. With his last strength, he shouted for Sona to run, but it was too late. Before his eyes, the monster grabbed the girl and squeezed her with inhuman strength. The sound of crunching bones was clearly audible in the air. The next moment, Lucas saw that the monster's mouth opened wide and began to mercilessly devour the girl. The last thing the girl said was the word brother. It seems this memory seriously angered the protagonist. His veins bulged. His hand became more powerful and covered in tongues of lightning. After which, with all his might, Justice's successor concentrated all his power and literally demolished all the massive columns in the room with one blow. Seeing this, Camilla was incredibly surprised. Her eyes opened wide. She did not expect such power because he did not even turn into Justice, as if his strength was increasing with every second. A determined Lucas confidently said that he would train now and do everything in his power in the future. At this time, in one of the few remaining villain bases, a guy was sitting and searching for something on the internet. He receives a call, and when he puts the phone to his ear, he hears information that a couple of new recruits have joined the Union team and are heading on a mission to his area. Hearing this, the guy was delighted and stood up, heading towards the door, where his footprints had left some kind of creepy, incomprehensible substance in the form of dirt. Opening the door to the basement, he said that he and his guys were bored, they were hungry, and below they could see a bunch of angry eyes and the open mouths of strange creatures. On the other side of the street, our three heroes were on their way to a mission assigned to them by the head of the Union team. Mockingly, seeing Lucas's uncertainty, Thomas wonders if they can handle it, because it is not an easy task. After which, to calm him down, he adds that the power of justice is with them, and there is nothing to worry about. Moreover, thanks to Camilla, they didn't even have to assign a hero mentor to them, and that really says a lot. Then Lucas became indignant that the group should consist of 4 people, but there were only 3 of them. At that moment, someone's hand touched his shoulder. With joy and in a great mood, the charming fair-haired girl greets everyone and says that she was sent along with them. Frightened by the sudden appearance, the protagonist jumps up and says Ivy's name in surprise, and she responds that they are the same age and why not become friends. Then Camilla, in a rage, attacks Thomas and is indignant that he brought a streamer. What was he even thinking about? Then the guy answered. He said that popularity is important in the Union team. It's convenient to have someone like Ivy. She can speak on behalf of their group, especially considering that they are forced to hide their identities. Surprised by what she heard, Ivy asks with interest why they need to hide their identities. Lucas, not understanding what was happening, thought how could they talk about this so openly? They would be exposed. Showing her naivety, the blonde cutie says with admiration that they really do have a streamer in their ranks, and that she too felt awkward in public at first. Everyone seemed to be reassured by this ridiculous assumption, and Thomas said that the area to patrol was quite large and they should split into pairs. Lucas immediately suggested that he be with Camilla, but Thomas, as the team captain, refused and ordered him to team up with Ivy. The guy's jaw dropped when he heard this. Then Thomas took the protagonist aside and said that he had forgotten what the professor had said. He had never felt the manifestations before. The difference in abilities before and after was incomparable. Evie would help him with this. Looking at the carefree girl, Lucas thought about how and what he should learn from her, because she is so carefree and is unlikely to have much strength. Besides, Thomas added, if they still had suspicions and mistrust of him, then Camilla would be able to personally observe him. Justice's student, joining the conversation, agrees and says that it is a good idea, and that is what they will do. After which she and the bone guy headed forward, wished them luck and ordered that if anything happened, they should contact them immediately. There was an awkward pause between the boy and the girl, as if they didn't understand what to do and in which direction to move. Then Ivy moved in the opposite direction. Lucas reluctantly followed her, grumbling under his breath that he was lucky to be walking around with a popular girl, noticing that she looked cuter than on streams. Suddenly thinking about the fact that he doesn't even know what abilities this cutie has, Evie appears before his eyes and asks what Thomas meant when he said she was watching him. This was said too bluntly. In response, Lucas replies that the guy just recently became a member of their group and it was meant to monitor his progress. The girl believed this without a second thought. Apparently she is very naive and, as if she read the main character's thoughts, began to talk about her abilities. She can eat as much food as she wants and gains incredible strength after doing so. Dumbfounded by such an ability, Lucas thinks that this is some kind of absurd nonsense, and he does not believe it at all. The cutie also took out a chocolate bar and, while eating it, added that she wanted to become a hero in order to eat a lot for free and become more popular. Hearing this, questions appeared in Lucas's head, but Thomas said that she would train him. Perhaps this bastard was just making fun of him. Then Evie started saying some really weird things about Lucas having to just try to think about what he wanted to do, and it didn't have to be something big. Not understanding the essence of the question, the guy simply remained silent and thought that there must be some reason why this naive and sweet girl uses her abilities better than him. The next moment, looking out from around the corner, Ivy motioned with her hand for him to slowly come up and look at it. Before their eyes stood a huge man, seemingly made entirely of muscles of an unknown kind, wearing practically no clothes, only torn shorts. Realizing that this was most likely their goal, he hadn't noticed them yet, and they first needed to sneak up quietly. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the crunching of candy bars and chomping. Turning around, the main character saw that the sweet little girl had pounced on the food with a huge appetite and seemed to be swallowing it without chewing. He got angry and wondered what was going on here, and whether this strange streamer had enough gray matter in her brain. Coming up, Lucas grabbed her hands and ordered her to stop eating immediately, especially since the enemy was very close. Ivy, not understanding anything, asked why he was angry. The guy's raised voice was heard by this creature, which turned out to be not a human at all, but some kind of monster, after which it rushed at the couple. The girl, seeing the enemy behind her, loudly shouted that after eating she could kick some ass, and her body began to be covered with some kind of energy. After which, with one powerful and sharp kick, she crushed the monster's head. Now she doesn't seem like a cute girl at all. From such a lightning-fast blow, the villain flew into the wall with incredible speed, breaking through it. Then in Lucas's head appeared the glory that the girl had said 10 minutes ago, about how Ivy could eat as much as she wanted and become stronger from it. So she really does have this ability. She burns calories, gaining superpowers. The glow around her body appears precisely because of this. But it is unclear how the monster restored its body and rushed to attack. A strong blow lands right on the body of a fragile, at first glance, girl. Fearing that she might die, Lucas shouts her name and rushes to help, but his worries turn out to be unfounded. Thanks to her instincts and a full stomach, the girl manages to block and, after taking a powerful blow, doesn't even move from her place. Counting how many calories she has burned, she realizes that she still has strength and concentrates a huge clot of energy in her left hand, after which she quickly hits the monster. Feeling incredible pain after a precise hit to the chest, it is unclear how he survived at all. Unable to win, the villain decides to run away. Glad to see the enemy retreat, Evie says that she will go after him to prevent him from surviving, and that Lucas should contact the rest of the group and inform them about this. Left alone, taking his phone out of his pocket, the main character, shocked by what he saw, realizes that something incredible has just happened before his eyes. Suddenly, some kind of clod of dirt snatches the phone from his hands. Seeing this, the guy tries to grab it but does not succeed. Behind him, some strange guy we saw earlier in the office seems to materialize out of this mud and asks if the main character was really going to contact his friends, but he won't be able to. Seeing this picture in front of him, thinking that no one warned that there would be someone else here, Lucas understands that this strange guy is smart, unlike the previous monster. But the main goal now is to contact the team, and he rushes to take the phone. But his blow passes through the enemy's body, as if he hit a mud ball. Lucas doesn't understand what the hell is going on here. All that remains of that attacker are puddles of dirt around. Taking advantage of the protagonist's lapse in vigilance, the mud villain pierces his body with a knife. Quickly flowing like a clot of dirt, he appears in front of the guy, and with a terrifying smile, like a psycho, says that he won't be able to take the phone. Enraged by these words, Lucas delivered a quick blow to the opponent's head. This time there was a sensation of impact, but it was somehow strange. It seems that the enemy didn't even feel him, but only stood and wondered where that beauty had gone. He wasn't interested at all. Unable to bear the fact that he was being ignored, Lucas began to ask about what the enemy had to do with the monster that had appeared here earlier. In response, he simply said that, who knows, who knows. Right now he is interested in something else. Whether that nice girl is helping him with the manifestation. Not everyone is able to withstand their manifestation, and the villain takes advantage of this, turning such people into his puppets. The terrifying expression on this psycho's face is terrifying. Apparently, he is determined to make a new doll out of the main character. Covered in lightning bolts of anger, Lucas says that if they became such monsters because of this guy, then he will answer for everything he did. Dirt appeared on the opponent's body, and he confidently said that he should try it then, after which they both rushed at each other. Justice's successor once again landed a powerful blow on a clot of mud. The enemy seemed to be able to transform any part of his body into mud, taking no damage at all. But this time his hand seemed to be bound by this incomprehensible mixture. Just a little more, and he wouldn't even be able to move it. The next second, the opponent collected a pile of dirt in his mouth and began shooting it at Lucas like a machine gun. Having barely dodged it, the guy felt a sharp pain in his hand. The dirt was squeezing his hand like a vice. He tried to remove it, but nothing worked. Seeing these attempts, the psycho said that his dirt could not be removed in any way. Once it stuck, it became stronger than medical plaster. Although it may not be as strong, but who the hell cares? His throat became huge and ugly, after which he released another burst of mud bullets. This time he failed to dodge a couple of projectiles. Now his second hand is also tied up. It is becoming increasingly difficult to move. It seems that soon he will collect all his dirt and lose. Then the protagonist decides that in order to win, he needs to close the distance as quickly as possible and go into close combat, after which he rushes at the enemy. The opponent smiles and says that it is a good idea, but he will not be able to win, as he has already collected a lot of dirt and his movements have become slow. As if not hearing the provocations, Lucas concentrates all his strength in his hand. It is suddenly freed from the shackles of dirt, and you can feel the incredible energy emanating from the guy. The enemy seems to have been caught off guard, his eyes looking in surprise at the approaching fist. Did he really hit the target? Thought the main character. But the hand again flies through the body of the strange enemy. The smile was still visible on his terrifying face. He even stuck out his tongue and said that it hurt, but it wasn't enough. Lucas's hand seemed to be stuck in a hardened wall. He couldn't free it. It was a special trap set by the enemy. After which he shouted that he was not that weak, and began to beat the main character with many quick blows. Almost losing consciousness, Lucas felt a sudden surge of strength and in rage launched a powerful blow towards the enemy, almost putting an end to the confrontation. Suddenly, a huge titan, consisting of a pile of muscles, appeared in front of the mud psycho. Its ferocious mouth emitted a deafening cry and rushed forward headlong. The guy was distracted and received a powerful blow that sent him flying several dozen meters. A timely block saved his life. Looking ahead, he thought that this monster had once been a human too. How vile this psycho was acting. Without showing weakness, with a smile, the villain realized that the guy was strong, and the last blow almost killed him. The pain inside seemed like it would tear him apart. Having pulled himself together, the psycho said that the fight was kind of boring. He remembered a huge number of similar ones and Lucas would be next. Enraged by these words, the protagonist realized that this monster had killed many people, deprived them of their minds, and made them his army. At that moment, another turquoise-colored creature appeared behind the psychopath. It looked much uglier than the previous ones, probably due to the time it had spent in this form. But that's not the end. Looking back, there were two more of the same converted monsters standing there. Then the villain said, slowly moving away from Lucas, that he was tired of messing around here and he would go to that beauty. It would be more fun with her, and his charges would now deal with him. As if hearing the order, the collars on the monsters began to break. It seemed they were holding back their true monstrous power, as the enemies seemed to be transformed and became more powerful. At that very moment, an incredibly powerful attack falls upon Lucas. He miraculously manages to jump away, but the monstrous force of the blow creates a crater in the asphalt. Completely at a loss, as he faces four enormous brutes, the protagonist searches for ways to emerge victorious from this difficult situation. Two monsters are flying at him at once. It seems like a little more and they will simply crush the hero. Dodging this attack, he receives a hard blow to the back. The blow seems to pierce him through and Lucas falls to the ground. Subsequently, all four attackers literally beat him, hitting every centimeter of his body. It seems that all his insides will soon begin to bleed. But despite this, it seems as if an incredible power is awakening in Justice's successor. Complete indifference can be seen in his eyes, and the feeling of pain has left him. Charging one incredible attack after another, the fists absorb more and more energy, giving the wielder monstrous strength. Having surrounded the protagonist, the villains try to attack him at once and take him by surprise, but he fights off all attacks and even strikes back. The next moment, two big guys with their combined efforts throw Lucas back several meters. But it seems this only angers him even more, and despite his almost depleted energy reserves, electrical sparks cover the hero's body. With incredible speed, he jumps on one of the opponents and slams them into the ground, not even giving them a chance to take defensive action. The monsters seem to be starting to feel tired. Loud wheezing sounds are coming from their mouths. They are gathering in a group, preparing for the next attack. Suddenly, one of them releases its tongue, which easily breaks through the wall behind the main character. Not expecting that they were capable of such a thing, Justice's successor luckily manages to deflect the body, almost falling. Following him, the turquoise titan jumps forward with a quick movement of his legs. Waving his muscular arms, he hits the hero. But Lucas manages to block the blow, but even so, it causes significant damage, which slams him into the wall, his strength almost running out. Breathing heavily from the grueling fight, he doesn't understand how to pull himself together and defeat four crazed opponents at once. Before this, he tried to restrain his strength, as he understood that inside these monsters there were ordinary people. At this time, Cutie Ivy caught up with and defeated the very first monster, its lifeless body lying on the asphalt, showing no signs of life. Pleased with herself and quite hungry, the girl stretches her muscles, thinking how good it would be to film all of this and show it to her viewers. Standing over her defeated opponent, she notices someone's silhouette in the distance, which is rapidly approaching. It is unclear who it is. Suddenly, the same psycho who unleashed his horde of monsters on Lucas clearly appears before her. He praises Evie, saying that she did a good job. Asking how she dealt with such a big guy alone, he adds that he is also a new hero, gaining her trust. Continuing to praise his interlocutor, the villain says that the cutie did all the dirty work for him, and that in fact he was tracking this monster. Remembering Lucas, the girl asks if he has seen a guy with dark hair who should have reunited with the rest of the group and been here a long time ago. Looking askance at his stricken puppet, the psycho replies that he saw some guy shout that he had to say something to his team and then disappear from sight. Looking at the cutie, he does not understand at all how she managed to defeat one of his strongest charges, thinking that he overestimated him. Then the girl suspiciously asks which team this stranger belongs to. Judging by his clothes, he is neither a guardian nor a superhuman. Then, with a wide smile, trying to inspire confidence, the strange guy replies that he is new to the Union team. Interrupting his speech, Ivy says that this is not true, since she has a very good memory for faces and she did not see him at the general meeting of all the newcomers. At this time, the psycho appears behind her and tries to attack. Thanks to her incredible sense of smell, the cutie quickly turns around and literally splits the stranger's hand with a lightning-fast blow. Not expecting such a turn of events at all, forgetting even what he wanted to do, he widens his eyes and a huge hole appears in place of his hand. Ivy calmly says, looking at the stranger, that touching girls without permission is a bad thing, even for the most avid fan. His hand flew 2 miles away from the strong blow, hitting the wall and slowly flowing down. Saying that this guy is kind of suspicious, she just wanted to digest the bars and rest. The girl is covered in a multicolored glow. Returning to the main character, who at this time, without slowing down at all, repeatedly knocks out enemies, but they quickly recover and continue to attack. One of them is in a wild rage from the injuries he received. Steam is escaping from his eyes and mouth. He seems to be serious. Suddenly, the largest of the converted grabs Lucas by both hands at once, with such force that he is unable to even move his fingers. Seeing that despite all his efforts, the people inside these monsters still do not awaken, the protagonist decides that it is not people at all who are fighting him now, and a smile appears on his face. It's as if a bolt of lightning strikes the guy, and he becomes completely covered in thick, glowing energy, which, when it appears, throws the attackers back a couple of meters. With one hand, Lucas, fighting at full power, literally crushes the arm of one of his opponents, grabs him and lifts him above himself. Even such a seemingly insensitive monster screams in pain, unable to resist such enormous inhuman force. With one sharp throw, the protagonist sends the monster flying with all his might, who along the way runs into another attacker and they both fly into the wall. It seems their battle is over. Memories suddenly flash through Lucas's mind, in which he asked Camila if it was possible to bring someone who had turned back to their senses, to which Thomas confidently replied that now they were just monsters, and there was not a single known case where the insane could become human again. They should be killed without hesitation. Having accepted all these words, standing surrounded by the 2 remaining monsters, the protagonist says that he is very sorry that they were turned into dolls, and he will finish with them as quickly as possible. At this time, Ivy, before attacking, asks the suspicious stranger if he really saw her teammate and if everything is okay with him. In response to this, the psycho says that he doesn't know, maybe the monsters are already digesting him. According to him, the cutie in front of him is not so weak. Her abilities are simply amazing and she should agree to cooperate. Enraged upon hearing these words, the girl replies, "A ban is definitely a ban. It's a shame there's no such feature in real life, otherwise she wouldn't have to listen to all this nonsense." Disappointed, the villain turns into a mud monster, flies into the air and says that he will enjoy torturing her even more. Without thinking twice, the heroine delivers a series of blows, but it seems she misses, as the dirt simply flies apart from her attacks. The enemy creature circles around at breakneck speed and envelops the girl, trying to immobilize her. Then Ivy, concentrating all her strength in her legs, crouches for a moment and prepares to jump to get out of this mud trap, after which he jumps so high that he seems to be higher than the 5-story buildings around him. Seeing that his opponent is trying to increase the fighting distance, the villain begins to attack her with his mud projectiles fired from his mouth. In fact, the girl avoided falling into the trap, and, what's more, in the air, began to replenish her strength by eating bars hidden for a special occasion. Having quickly finished eating, a huge ball of charming and at the same time destructive energy forms above the girl's head. She unleashes this entire enormous clot of incredible power on the enemy, seemingly not giving him a chance to dodge. Miraculously surviving, the mud stranger assesses his opponent's attack and thinks that after such a release of energy, the girl should quickly run out of breath. But his conclusions are hasty, simultaneously absorbing the bars and releasing balls of energy one after another. She literally exhausts the villain. Seeing Ivy constantly eating and eating makes him angry, and he yells at her to finish her food faster. After this, he raises a huge wall of dirt and brings it down on the heroine, hoping to grab her. Ivy punches a hole in the wall and breaks free, realizing that she won't be able to hold back all these endless streams any longer. Not noticing the whole situation while defending herself, the girl ends up in a puddle of mud, which envelops her legs and completely immobilizes her. Noticing this, the villain uses his manifestation, which he calls a mud storm. Using his special ability, he completely draws in Ivy's body from all sides and envelops it, making it difficult for her to even breathe in this state. Returning to his normal form, the psycho approaches and says that the girl looks cute even in this slop, so cute that he wanted to take her home. Just as he began to reach his vile hand towards the heroine, Lucas suddenly appears, and with a stinging blow of enormous force almost knocks out the villain. Shouting angrily at him not to dare touch his comrades, a worthless person like him was not even worthy of standing next to them. Seeing his previous opponent, the psycho said that he didn't think they would meet again, and why did he show up if he had already lost to him? In response to this, the guy calmly said that while he was running here, he was considering a bunch of options on how to make a stake out of it. Meanwhile, at the Hero Training Center, Helen couldn't get Lucas out of her head. He said he had infiltrated Union, but there was no news after that. Seeing a cleaning robot near the entrance to the main training hall of the deceased Justice, the girl asked what had happened. In response, she heard that she would not be able to train here today, since it seemed that Mr. Justice had used her a little earlier. Everything inside was destroyed. Entering the training room, the girl was surprised and angry at the same time, since she could only guess what Lucas was doing here. Meanwhile, on the streets of Tokyo, in response to Lucas's insolence, a strange guy replies that when someone gives him good advice, he should thank them and take them seriously, and that fighting them is useless. But as they say, if you don't try, you'll never know. With this attitude, the main character gathers his strength and prepares for the offensive. Only after laughing does the psycho again begin to fill his throat with lumps of dirt and release them at him. Lucas is familiar with this attack, and without any surprise, he digs his fingers into the asphalt in a coordinated manner, rips it out and throws it in front of him, thus protecting himself from the projectiles. The villain says, praising him, that it's a good move. It's certainly better than just running away, as he did earlier. But how can he defend himself against it? A huge mud dragon appears in front of Justice's successor, rushing quickly towards him. It seems so huge that it could fill the entire street. With incredible speed, the villain strikes one blow after another, as if from all sides at once, thereby covering the protagonist's body with layers of dirt until he is completely immobilized. With a nasty smile, the stranger mocks him by saying that he wanted to make a stake out of him, but ended up standing in the mud and unable to even move. However, our hero is very determined and, as if throwing off the fluff, with a stream of energy he breaks all the shackles of dirt. With every second he becomes stronger. Not understanding what is happening, the attacker watches this picture and cannot believe that in just half an hour this guy has become many times stronger. Saying that his opponent is about to be in a lot of pain, Lucas stretches his shoulder, which was a little stiff from the dirt hanging over it, but now he feels great. The next moment, with monstrous force and speed, he strikes the enemy, breaking all the walls around him from the sound wave. The villain didn't even have time to react. He flew off and hit the asphalt a couple of times. Once again, out of desperation, he tries to fire mud projectiles from a distance. Then Lucas says that didn't he understand that it was useless and repels the entire attack with one movement of his hand. With the acquired speed, the dirt doesn't even have time to stick to the body. Seeing that the dirt does not stick but immediately crumbles, as if touched by flame, the villain makes no more attempts and, shocked, reassures himself that such blows will definitely not work on him. His guesses are completely wrong. The next blow from the protagonist literally tears the criminal into small pieces. But strangely enough, the remaining part of the body, even after this, begins to regenerate and reassemble the bandit's body piece by piece. Feeling like he's found the key to victory, Lucas smiles and wonders if the villain plans to keep rebuilding his pathetic, disfigured body forever. Realizing that the pile of dirt has crumbled into dust, the psycho thinks that if this continues, his dirt will completely dry up. He needs to finish as soon as possible and uses his manifestation called a mudstorm. Our hero finds himself inside a huge mud tornado. Then, gathering all his strength, Lucas decides to simply strike underneath himself and dispel all this dirt with a shockwave. It was a great idea. At the site of the monstrous impact, a huge crater appears, as if a rocket had just landed there. Having accepted defeat, the villain thinks that this hero is really a newbie. He scattered the manifestation with the force of the wind, and he needs to get out as quickly as possible. But it seems this outcome of events does not suit Justice's successor, because he intends to finish off the criminal here and now. This turns out to be difficult to do. The enemy's regeneration is very strong, and even 10 days won't be enough for him to completely destroy all the dirt. Then realizing that the power he receives with the transformation into Justice, he still could not use 100%, since he still cannot control such a volume of power, but he is able to take it for a moment. One martial arts master said that there is no need to exhaust the body all the time. It is much more important to concentrate at the moment when it is really necessary. Taking a deep breath and focusing on his inner energy, the protagonist moves his arm back slightly, preparing for the final blow, somewhat reminiscent of a karate move. Seeing that something is wrong and the young man standing in front of him has gained a lot of confidence, the villain understands that his end has come. With surprising and lightning-fast power, to everyone's surprise, Lucas uses his manifestation, which he calls Magnum, although this blow is even faster than a gunshot. The villain is shattered into tiny pieces. He can no longer recover. The fight is finally over. Meanwhile, the other part of the group patrolled the area, examining the surroundings, but so far they could not find a single villain. Noticing Thomas's tension and close observation of his actions, he asks if Camila is being too vigilant and distrustful of him. The girl replies that now she has no compelling reason to trust him and asks why he infiltrated the Union team. If his goal is to kill villains, what is the need for such a thing? Saying that his interlocutor is right, Thomas claims that they have not yet achieved such a strong relationship that he would tell her all his plans for the future. Suddenly, Camila says to stop and points to a nearby building, showing that it is the only building in the entire area with lights on and that this is suspicious. Not understanding how the girl noticed this small, barely noticeable light, the guy says that he can check, but there are strong chains hanging on the door. This turns out to be no problem, as Thomas, by turning his hand into a bone hammer, tears them apart with seemingly no effort. Upon entering the room, they saw that there was nothing suspicious there. Perhaps someone had simply left and forgotten to turn off the light. The guy examining the room finds some strange switch and presses it, but the light does not turn off, which means there is another generator in the building. Camila notes that there is a secret generator in the office. Something is fishy here. After which she goes to the iron door and tears it off its hinges with the pressure of her shadows. Upon entering, both characters' faces show both fear and surprise at the same time. There were dozens of capsules with monsters there. Most likely this was the very laboratory of that mud psycho that Lucas dealt with. All the tables were strewn with all sorts of small instruments. It seemed that monstrous and illegal experiments on people were carried out in this room. Having found documents and records, Thomas reads out that hundreds of biological experiments were indeed carried out in this sinister place. Listening to him, Camila notices that one of the computers is connected to the network and is working. Someone must have been there recently. There is a password on the desktop computer. It looks like we'll have to carry the bodies to the team's main building, but suddenly Thomas comes up and starts trying to hack the system and succeeds. Not understanding how he managed it, the girl looks at him suspiciously. But the guy says that according to the data, there were only 53 test subjects, most of whom couldn't withstand it and died. Each test subject was from a cast of incompetent people with untapped heroic potential, and the scale of the experiments was much worse than he thought. A shadow ribbon suddenly appears in front of the guy and destroys the table. It seems Camila is angry. She looks at Thomas with displeasure and asks how he managed to crack the password so quickly. It seems he is not telling the whole story. At this time, having dealt with the enemy, Lucas remembers the cutie Ivy, who seems to be taking a mud bath and seems to be doing well. Seeing a radio on the asphalt, which apparently belonged to that mud guy, the hero picks it up and hears a question from within asking if Bruce is okay. Realizing that the filthy psycho was named Bruce and that he had an accomplice, Lucas, turning into a criminal, replies that everything is fine and he dealt with the small-time heroes. In response, information is heard that a group of 2 people entered the secret laboratory and the person on the other side of the radio filled everything there with explosives. Realizing that the 2 people who came in are Camila and Thomas, the protagonist tries to find out where this place is and gives himself away. As he transforms back, Lucas realizes that his comrades are in danger and he needs to find them as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, after Camila's question, Thomas seems to attack her, turning his hand into a bone fist. But in fact, he quickly moves behind her and repels some strange attack, thereby saving the girl. It seems there is someone else here besides them. The bones in Thomas's arm quickly broke as soon as they touched the toxic green liquid, at which time both heroes notice a strange man with the same liquid flowing out of his hands. Once it hits a wall, it immediately destroys all the walls, as if exploding them. Debris flies across the room and nearly covers Camila. and Thomas kicks her away, saving her from death. But unfortunately, he doesn't have time to jump away and is covered by a huge piece of wall, from under which blood splatters. A stranger's face appears from the shadows, and he calmly reasons that this is the same Camila in front of him. He heard that the Union team sent her on a mission. The angry girl screams that since he heard about her, he came here in vain and attacks him with a multitude of shadows at once. But the enemy, by kicking the ground, materializes his toxic green solution around himself and neutralizes the attack launched by Camila.